But Scott's new and he's our presenter today. And let me tell you a little bit about Scott. He's been a Toastmaster for, he says, about 5 years, but I think it's a little longer.
It could be.
I'm sure I've known him at least that long. And he's had officer positions in a lot of different clubs. I believe he was area director or area governor at
Yes.
one point. Yep. And one thing in common is most of those clubs have been successful in meeting their club goals. So he's got a little bit of street cred here to share with us. He also likes competing in the contests. So, but today he's going to help us learn how you welcome a guest. So, guest walks in the door. Now, what do you do? We're going to hear about that from Scott Kazin. Take it away, Scott.
All right. Let me get my screen share here. All right. Well, here we go. Well, I like to thank everybody for coming on a Sunday night and sitting and listening to what I have to say. So, and I appreciate Keith for giving me the offer to come in and present tonight. All right. A lot of times you get a person, they come to your club meeting. Now what? It all starts when they come to the door. So we're going to look at a few things that will make your guests feel welcome when they come to your club. First, we'll look at the greeting. Then we'll look at the meeting. Then we'll leave the meeting. And then the follow-up. These are all important things that you need to do to make sure that the guest feels welcome and that they want to come back and that they want to join your club. So let's get started with the greeting. Now, if you're greeting somebody in person, that's great. They come to your door, they walk in your door. The first thing you should do is say, hello, how are you doing? Okay, it's just a general greeting. They look, you might want to shake hands, fist bump, whatever everybody's doing nowadays. Introduce yourself and you're standing in the club. If you're a member, just say I'm a member. If you're the sergeant at arms, say you're the sergeant at arms or the club president or whoever's greeting people that are coming in that day, so they know who you are and that where you're standing is in your club. Welcome them to your club. You say, hey, thanks for coming to my Toastmaster club. Mark our words. Okay, so that way they know where they came, because sometimes a lot of them, they check out what's going on and how many clubs they check out. Ask them their name. It's important to get their name and make sure you call them by their name, because I like that old saying from Cheers where people like to go where they know your name, and that's so true. Okay, repeat their name and ask them what brought them to your meeting today. That's another very important question, because you want to know if they're coming there just to learn to get over the fear of speaking, or whether they got promoted and they have to give presentations, or they have to talk to a team, or somebody might be there because they have to give a speech at a wedding or at church or some function that they have. So it's always good to find out what brought them to the meeting today. Then if they say like for work, ask the follow-up question. If they say it's work related, ask them what they do. Get them to talk a little bit about themselves. People feel more comfortable when they go ahead and they get to talk about themselves. And if you find out that, say they're an engineer or they're a supervisor or they're marketing, and you have members that are in that field, introduce them to that person, because then they can make a connection. And when they make that connection, they're more likely to have a better time and they're more likely to come back. Introduce them to every member that is there if you have time, because I know sometimes when meetings are setting up, sometimes it's people come late and it's just trying to get the meeting set up, and it's like, hi, I'm so and so, and everybody rushes around. But then there's also, we'll get into a little bit later, of what the Toastmaster is supposed to do also. Hand them a welcome packet. I know when I was an area director, we'd go to some clubs and they wouldn't have a welcome packet. Now that's very important because that's something they can take with them. And it's also something they can look at later and they won't forget it. I like to put it in a bright colored folder because it'll stick out and it'll remind them that they came to your Toastmaster club and have important stuff in there about what Toastmasters has to offer and what your club has to offer. Have a club officer sit with them. This is really important because as a Toastmaster goes through the agenda in the meeting, that club officer, or even if there's not a club officer there, have them sit with a veteran of the club so they can explain what's going on in the agenda. And if they have any questions during the meeting, they can just talk to the person next to them to find out what is going on. So this is how it sounds. Welcome. My name is Scott. I am president of Mark Our Words. Thank you for coming to our club today. What brings you here today? They might say work. Well, hey, that's great. What do you do for work? I'm an engineer. Oh, that's fabulous. One of our members is an engineer. I'd like to introduce you. He's here right now. I'll go over and introduce him. And then, you know what? Here's our vice president of membership. Here's this person. So you introduce them to as many people as you can. It's a little hard because nowadays we have the virtual meeting. In the virtual meeting, it's hard to introduce people on the screen, but you can just say, and here's some of our other club members. And if there's somebody that's on the screen, introduce them to them on the screen. Okay. Now, with COVID and go a lot of virtual, we have a few things, other things we got going on, and we have to introduce people or greetings online. It's pretty much the exact same thing as if you were to greet somebody in person. Start out with a hello, how you doing? They'll let you know. In Wisconsin, most people say I'm freezing to death right about now, but you know, that's Wisconsin. All right, introduce yourself and welcome them to the club. And then you want to ask them their name and where they're from. Now, this is really interesting. Since there is the web, they could be from anywhere. They could be from another state. I know for a short time I was with Waukesha Toastmasters Club. They have a member who's from Australia. And at one of our meetings, we had some people from China. We had some people from the Philippines. And it's just amazing where you can find members at now that we have the web and everybody's going online. So with these hybrid meetings, you might get people from all around the world. I know the people like in China, when we were in the Philippines, our meeting, it was dark. It was 4 o'clock or after 4 o'clock and it was dark. And the people that were from the Philippines and China, it was bright and sunny in their background. So it was kind of interesting that people came that far away to our meeting, you know, and with the different time changes, it's kind of funny. Ask them what brought them to your meeting, just like the person in person. Now, when you ask them, they might say work, but sometimes a lot of people that are in different countries or in different states just want to find out what other Toastmaster clubs are doing as far as retaining members or what they're doing to make their meetings fun. Like some clubs that you go to, how many clubs have a joke master? How many clubs don't? You know, it's just different things to find out. Maybe there's something at a different club that might work for our club. So you might, like I said, you might have different reasons for coming online. Make sure you get their email address and have them put that in the chat box. The reason why that's important is because you want to capture that email. And then that way, when they do that, you can send them out an email with the agenda and a welcome packet and an application to join your club. And that's really good because then they have that email they can look at and the agenda while the meeting is going on. And two, you also want to do that with the person that comes in person, because then that way you have contact with them when you want your next meeting and when you want them to come. And two, if you have a special guest that's going to talk about some marketing things and that person was in marketing, you might want to say, hey, this person is going to be speaking about marketing. You're in marketing. Maybe you want to come to our meeting and check it out. And then I kind of got ahead of myself there, but as long as they have the agenda, then that way they can follow along in the agenda. And that's really important. So here's how it sounds. Hey, welcome. I'm Scott. I'm the president of Mark Our Words. What's your name and where are you from? You're from the Philippines. Oh, that's great. What time is it over there? What brought you to our meeting today? It looks sunny there. It's cold here. Make them feel welcome. Hey, can I get your name and email in the chat box so we can send you our welcome packet and our agenda for the day? Okay. And then that way they feel more included in the meeting. They're a little bit more involved. So you might get somebody to join that's not quite sure, but yet, you know, they feel involved in the meeting and for being new. Now we're starting the meeting. The Toastmaster calls the meeting to order. And then the Toastmaster will acknowledge the guest and ask them if they could tell a little bit about themselves. You really want them to open up a little bit. So that's a nice open question. Because if you didn't get to introduce them to everybody because everybody was running around at the last minute trying to get everything set up, or they were having technical difficulties getting on the web, you know, it's a good time for them now to introduce themselves, tell a little bit about themselves and what brought them to the club and what they do. So that's also a good thing, and make sure you get the people online. The Toastmaster will explain the agenda for the meeting. Now, when you have in person, the person that he's sitting next to, they can help them go through the agenda and explain to them a little bit what's going to go on during the meeting. And that is very, very helpful because you'll have people that get lost in the agenda. And if they can sit next to somebody that knows what's going on, they can explain the agenda to them. The Toastmaster will explain their role in the meeting. Okay, it's very important to explain all the roles to people, because if they've never heard of Toastmasters or never been to a Toastmaster meeting, you want them to know what everybody is doing in the meeting, because they have no idea. So the Toastmaster will tell them, well, I'm going to be going ahead and I'm going to be running the meeting. I'm going to make sure that we explain, that we keep on track and on time. We make sure that I call up the right people for their roles. And then he'll go ahead, and then the Toastmaster will call on members that have roles in the meeting, explain what they do. They'll call up the timer. The timer will explain what he needs to do. You know, when he shows the green, when he shows the yellow, when he shows the red. We'll tell the grammarian to stand up, the evaluators, the general evaluators. And that way, the person will feel that he gets to know all the roles and what everybody is doing in there. Then the person sitting with the guest will ask them if they have any questions right before they get started. In the middle of table topics, ask if there's any guests that would like to try. Now, some guests will be scared to death and they won't want to participate. That's okay. But if you have guests, it's good to, when you start your table topics, to just throw easy questions at them. So that way they know they're going to get an easy question. An easy question to a guest if they decide to participate in table topics would be to, what do you do for fun? Everybody likes to talk about themselves. So they'll get up and they'll talk about themselves, and they might resonate with one of the members. You know, they might be into gardening, they might like the Brewers, they might like the Packers. You know, there's a wide variety of things that people can relate to. And, you know, after the meeting, they might be able to talk about, you know, football or basketball or whatever they have. So this is what they sound like. I'm Scott. Let me go back. I'm Scott. I'm the Toastmaster for today's meeting. I will be running the meeting, and I am going to make sure that the meeting is on schedule and we're on time. We got started on time, and now we're going to go ahead, and as we go through, I'll make sure that we get out of here on time because somebody else is waiting for the room. And okay, and then for Toastmaster, I call on the person that's going to be doing table topics. Please stand and tell what you are going to be doing today. Grammarian, what you are going to do today. Timer, what are you going to be doing today? And then we're going to get to the table topics. I'll ask them, would you like to go ahead and try a table topic question? They say yes, okay. If not, we'll say, okay, that's good, because, you know, there might be an inverted person that doesn't want to do any speaking. And then when we wind up at the end of the meeting, you know, we'll ask them that question too. All right, we're coming to the end of the meeting. Now, ask all the guests what they thought about the meeting. That way, you can get some questions answered by finding out what they thought was good, what was bad. Maybe they're really scared. So maybe they might say, oh, everything was really good. Ask them what they liked about it. Maybe ask them what they didn't like about it. You know, the asked about what you didn't like about it might be a little too much because they really don't want to, you know, they're new and they're kind of shy. So don't, you know, you might not want to ask them that, but just ask them what they liked about the meeting. And make sure you ask the people online what they like too. Let all the guests know when the next meeting is. It's very important. It's if you have the welcome packet, you can always write on the welcome packet the next couple of meetings, so that way they know. Because if you tell somebody and they're not used to having that habit of all of a sudden, oh, it's 6:30 on Wednesday, I have to go to my Toastmaster meeting, or I have to get online for my Toastmaster meeting. It might go right out the window, and then the next day they're like, oh, my Toastmaster meeting was last night, I was supposed to show up. So let the guests know when the next meeting is. If they came in person to the meeting, talk to them after the meeting. You want to make sure that you can connect with them, ask them if they're thinking about joining, go over the sheet on the application on what it all applies to and what the fees are. I mean, it's a lot for a person to take in. That's why you have those welcome packets, so they can take that home. If they are online, thank them for coming and tell them that you'll send them a link for the next meeting. A lot of times people will forget, so sending that link to the next meeting, at least they have it in their feed, in their email. Here's what that sounds like. Well, I'd like to thank our guests for coming today. What did you think, Bob, of the meeting? Bob tells me, okay. Sue, what did you think about the meeting? Well, I thought it was great. It's like something I could do, but I don't know if I want to do it right away. Okay, well, we'll just keep in touch. Okay, everybody, our next meeting, mark it down on your calendars. This is what is going to be our meeting. It's going to be Wednesday at 6:30 at the bank. We'll hope to see everybody there. Thank you for coming. And now everybody's leaving. Then we'll go ahead and we'll talk to Bob. Hey, Bob, what'd you think of the meeting? Oh, that's great. Is you think this might be something for you that you need to do and would like to join? Just to go over real quick about our application, this is what it is. Because if you do join in this month, you know, you get a little bit of discount because it's every 6 months. Explain to them what the applications and what the fees are, because they'll make it a lot easier on them and they have time to think about it. Then we come to the follow-up. Now, after they leave, sometimes people leave our meetings and it completely slips their mind, especially if you only meet once a month or you're meeting twice a month. They have a week to 2 weeks to forget what they're doing, and they might schedule a whole bunch of different other stuff in their busy life. So what you do is you send them right after the meeting. You can go ahead and send them a thank you. Thank you for coming to our club. It was nice to meet them. And then we're going to send a time and that for our next meeting so they know when to be there. A day before the meeting, send them a reminder that your meeting is this date, this time, the Zoom link, and you're looking forward to seeing them. If you're looking forward to seeing somebody and you send that to somebody, they got, oh, they're looking for me to be there, which is great, because the next thing you know, they could be, oh, I got to go there. I got to meet that one guy because he's in the same business as I am, or he likes the connection, or he might have something to say. Maybe he wants to do some table topics. The day of the meeting, send another reminder. You want to probably do another reminder, but you want to do it, I would say, about 3 hours before the meeting starts. So that way, if they do have something planned, they can rearrange it to where they can make it. Send them the Zoom link. That way, if they can't be there in person, then they can maybe be online. Maybe they don't have a babysitter for the kids, or there's something that they have to do while it's stay at home. So it's very important to also send that Zoom link. That way they can go ahead and still attend the meeting. And that way they get more insight into what the meeting is all about. All right, do I have any questions?
All right, great. Thanks. Thanks, Scott. It was a very informative presentation that you shared. We had a couple items in chat, and just to kind of prompt things, I'd like to call on some of them to elaborate and share a little bit. So Susan had a couple good comments about what they do in their club. So,
okay.
After participating in enough president training this year as a new club president, I got the reinforcement that we had not been doing something. We were talking to people and saying, we hope you will join. We hope you're thinking about joining, but we didn't come out and say, we want you to join. So I have written it into my script that I use all the time. I provided it for other people who, if they, for example, if they have the opportunity to say that, and I think it doesn't put them on the spot. They always have something to say, but it doesn't make it an option that we don't want them back. So we're pretty direct.
Yeah, it's kind of a fine line there, right? Between being pushy and making sure they know we would really like you to join.
Yes.
Great. Rhonda Borowski, you do things a little different in Waukesha Toastmasters. Would you like to share that?
Yes. Thank you for this opportunity. And what we do in Waukesha is that the Sergeant at Arms opens the meeting and the president is the one that introduced the guests.
And then how, if by chance the guest hasn't had the opportunity to meet with the president beforehand, do you have some sort of protocol to make sure it's somebody's responsibility to get that name and that face to the president?
We
So they
make
know to
sure
call?
everybody speaks at the meeting.
Yeah, I'm talking about like in the beginning, the introduction, right? Sergeant
Yeah.
at Arms calls the meeting to order, turns it over to the president, and then the president.
Calls for the guests to
Okay,
speak.
so yeah, so if they haven't met them yet, then they just they just ask, are there any guests in
Yes.
attendance? Okay, all right, good. All right, that's good. All right, and Teresa, I think your comments were similar to Susan's, that you'd love the guests to join, sharing some love there.
A zillion years ago, I used to sell major appliances at Sears, and you would always want to specifically let people know what the benefit is. So it isn't even a matter of, oh, it's 25 cents a day. No, no, no. Toastmasters gives you the opportunity to practice when your boss isn't staring over your shoulder. Toastmasters is going to give you the skills to do more. Toastmasters is going to help you communicate even better with those indignant recalcitrant teenagers in your home. We all have these challenges, and Toastmasters can help. And being able to give that message to the guests means that the guest makes a better link with how much they need Toastmasters. So then when you say, hey, I'm going to send you an application, we would love you to join our club, it kind of nudges them a little bit closer into coming in.
Okay, that's good. Tom, I see your hand up, but I've got a couple more questions in queue here, so I'm not ignoring you. I'm going to get back to you. And now Yuri's in line. So Nancy had a question about how you handle things if there's multiple guests. You want to expand on that thought a little bit, Nancy?
Sure.
Sure. What I've found, because we generally have a pretty small attendance, and for Zoom, we might have 1 or 2 people on. As the vice president of membership, I often get a little overwhelmed because I might also be the Zoom host. And so if there's, say, 2 people on the other side of the room that are guests, and they're thinking, okay, this meeting is done at this time, I got to go now, not realizing that there might be some follow-up conversation. What I'm finding is sometimes they escape the meeting without anyone else knowing, to help the vice president of membership. So I'm wondering if other clubs have sort of a protocol established, like if the vice president of membership is talking to someone, all the officers should be aware of any guests and make sure that they stop and chat with them. Just wondering how other clubs handle that.
Teresa's got a
I just want to
Just
speak to the
another?
whole harvesting of email addresses, which sounds like a real marketing thing. One way is using the registration feature in Zoom. If you're using Zoom anyway, there's requiring them to use their email address to get into the room at all. You have their email address. The other thing, that there's a club in New York that has, and they posted a couple times during the meeting, so people have the opportunity to sign up on the Google form, share their email address, share, what their interests are, why are they at the meeting, that type of thing. And you've got it right there. And then if the VPM is super busy because you had so many guests, you can divvy it up really easily. Hey, I'm an optimist. Let's hope that happens.
Great. Cindy, you had an idea. It looks like it might be for either a virtual or a hybrid meeting about breakout rooms.
Yeah, it works really well in those settings. Is if you've had a meeting, you have a guest or guests, and they're usually questions. You create a real quick breakout room. You say to the guests, you know what? We're going to give you our own private space. We're going to move you over with our VP membership, Bob, and you're going to have a quick conversation. So then you kind of push them off on the side. They can ask maybe more open questions. And then they can either get that, let me send you an app, I'm going to call you and follow up, so that they get one-on-one time. together. And then when it's, you just bring them back in the room.
So you do that during the meeting or before
At
the
the
meeting?
end.
At the end.
So when the meeting's wound down and everyone's, what is your feedback? And I also am a big advocate if you have to ask, we'd love you to join. It doesn't mean you have to, but it's better than they just go off and think, I wish someone would have asked me, right? So we would love you to join. And people usually say, well, I have questions, or I'm not sure, or I am sure. Great. Then what we're going to do is we're going to make a quick breakout room. We're going to put you in it with Keith, who's our head, and a lot of non-Toastmasters don't use the titles with our membership person, right? And then you put them in their own little space. They can ask those questions, maybe make a tighter connection, and then come back into the room, and it's done. But it gives you that more one-on-one time instead of in that big open space.
Yeah, especially if they're a little nervous, then yeah. Tom, you had your hand up. You have a question or comment?
What Cindy just told us was fantastic, because in our modern age, there's more Zoom meetings in industry, and people that may be coming to our meetings may be very familiar with Zoom meetings. And if our meetings don't look professional, and Cindy's suggestion just made her meeting look very professional. And so I think, Cindy, thank you for that. It was very, very good point. I have a couple of comments. I'm not too sure about asking people right off the bat, how did you feel about our meeting? Because if they didn't like it, you're not going to get an answer. So I don't know how beneficial that questioning is. But how about having some testimonials of our members, so that maybe particularly some of the veteran members who can say what Toastmasters has done for them. Then instead of asking people, how did you like the meeting? Ask them some questions about them. People like to talk about themselves. And so they might open up more easily if they have a little chance to talk about themselves. So instead of getting that information started at the beginning of a meeting, save that till the end of the meeting and ask people to say, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And perhaps you might want to make a comment as to why you have an interest in Toastmasters. I also wonder, and I'd like some feedback on this, is this a good time to give a sales pitch for Toastmasters, or is this too soon? I'm a salesman. In my entire retail career, and I built a sizable business, but I never ever missed the opportunity to sell. Is this a good time to sell?
I think you might have to read your prospective guest. Right? If they come in and they look like they're ready to buy, then close the sale. If they're kicking the tires, then make sure they come back again and learn more. That's my opinion.
Cindy, what's your opinion?
Thanks, Tom. I was in sales, so I get the whole sales cycle. I was just kind of putting this in chat. I don't see it as pressure filled. I think we would love to have you join is a very open and positive statement. It doesn't say, we're going to get you in the corner kind of a thing. And they say either, yes, I'd love to, or I'd like to think about it. Well, of course, our next meeting is whatever. I just think we're not asking, we want you to join the club. We're saying we'd love to have you have this experience with us and grow with us. That's the way I see it. But it is a style thing. I just know that since we started asking at my home club, we have the second time we did it, the person said, oh, yes, I'd like to join. How do you do that? So it was just it was like I said to the board, let's do this. Let's try this and see what happens. Great. Guest said she'll be back. Second time, the person said, yeah, I'd like to join. Where do I go? Well, put you in that breakout room. So yeah, you do have to customize it though. And it's never pressure filled. I agree with you.
What about some testimonials from club members?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's a personal style thing.
Yuri, did you have a question or comment? You've had your hand up there for a while.
I'd like to kind of take what Scott shared at the beginning and take it even another step, even before the meeting. Is that often most of us will get an email from the saying that the member is contacted through our website or usually through a contact us form. And then I'll get an email saying someone's interested here and they provide their contact information. Toastmasters does provide a sample email. It's more geared towards in-person part, but there's a way to tweak it to be for in-person or in-person and online. I think that part is equally important to perhaps share ideas about because that's even before we see a person at the meeting. Even before it's even a couple of days before or a week before, which I found out well enough because I sent 3 or 4 emails in the span of 2 days, and the good fortune of having 2 people show up. Maybe someone can comment on that, what they use or what they found helpful.
All right, great. Todd, you put something in the chat there. You, I see the word ghosted in the URL. Now I gotta know. You want to explain what we'd be looking at there?
Sure. So this is a video produced by one of my mentees from District 61 on how not to get ghosted by a guest. So it's definitely worth a look at. It's about an hour long, and it does talk a little bit about the psychology of converting a prospect to a guest and a guest to a member and the steps that you need to go through in using it. My other comment was, along with Tom's, the testimonials. What I've noticed in some clubs is kind of just before, well, just after the evaluation, just before club business, they often will say something like, so does anybody have any shout outs or any comments about how things are going in their work? And the idea is to have a testimonial that relates somehow to Toastmasters working in their life, whether it be personal or business or whatever, to show a success point. So people who are thinking about, is this for me? Hear a success story about how Toastmasters has helped somebody else, and they can see it relating to themselves. So that's why I call it Toastimonial. Every member in every club should have 3 Toastimonials. One was, when did they come? Why do they stay? And how has it helped them? And any one of those 3 things, they can be called on at any point to give a 1 to maybe up to 2 minute kind of little speech about how it worked for them and how it might work for somebody else if they're thinking and sitting on the fence. The third thing I wanted to mention is I've noticed that there's a lot of very experienced Toastmasters, be that by time or credentials or whatever you have. I think that whenever one of those members visits another club, their role is not to suck that guest out of that club and into their club, but to convert that prospect to a member for that club. So I always tell people when I'm in the room, they'll always ask you, who are you when you come, right? Blah, blah, blah. I always say to the Toastmaster or whoever's going to be the ranking officer in the chat afterwards, always call me last for guest comments. My reason for doing that is I'm listening to all of the other potential guests in the room, and I want to find out, why are they stuck? What's sitting on the fence for them? Why haven't they flipped over to the other side? And when I give my roundup, especially if I'm in the club for a second or third time, I like your club. If I come to your club and your club is boring, I'm never coming to your club again. And I've been to a lot of clubs. So when I'm in a club for a second or third time, I like your club. I'm going to highlight something about that club, which is the reason that club is the solution to that person's pain, and try to push them over. And I've seen it happen so many times because people get sucked off into that, like Cindy's idea about the breakout rooms. Really strong way to close and collapse a guest while they're hot and in the mood, because as you'll see in the video, that time frame that you let them stagnate and not get enough information, inevitably they'll ask somebody else who doesn't know about Toastmasters, and that will potentially shift them away from the excitement that they experienced during your meeting. So that's why you should watch that video so that you get some tips and tricks on how quickly you should follow up with them and things, so that you know that timeline before they disappear off into the sunset. And then you're wondering, why did they never come back? AKA you were ghosted.
Mhm, mhm. Oh, thanks. Thanks for sharing that. Teresa, I noticed you had a comment about something called the Toastmaster Minute. Would you like to share that?
It's actually a smaller scale than Todd was talking about. It's specifically during each meeting, one of us will volunteer to talk about something we learned in a Pathways project, or something we learned working on a Pathways project, or something we applied from our Toastmasters education to some form of real life. Sometimes it's going to be, I presented at TLI, it was awesome, I talked to so many cool Toastmasters. And sometimes it's going to be, I was really nervous during my team meeting here at work, and I was still able to share information about the project I was on because I've practiced on table topics. Something super brief, it's literally 1 minute, but it allows everybody to think a little bit about how Toastmasters can make that change.
All right, good. Well, I had a question that I wanted to pose. I hasn't come up yet. I've noticed, not a lot, but occasionally, sometimes you'll get a guest. Just the fact that they joined the Zoom meeting or walked into the room was a huge step for them. They are so scared. They don't want to say anything. Nothing. They want to sit in the corner and observe. And it's, you know, everybody's different, right? So what do you do with a guest like that, who, like, you don't know what's going on in everybody's mind, right? When they walk in the door. And if they say they just have come to observe, how do you handle that, yet give them an experience that wants to make them come back and maybe say their name the next time, right? Maybe try table topics the time after that. So any thoughts on how to address somebody who's that scared? Susan?
It sounds like that could be a good opportunity for listening to what they have to say and not trying to convince them to participate, excuse me, but saying, well, would you mind if I sat next to you during the meeting? Because if you do have any questions, you can whisper them to me, or if I see something that I think you might be interested in, I'll tell you a little bit more about what's going on, and we won't be disrupting anybody, but I'm there as a resource for you. And they could say, no, I'm going to the back, then you leave them. But they may take you up on the offer.
Right. Yeah. Obviously you can't force people to do something that they don't want, but the fact that they walked in the door said there's something, they're looking for something. And then, you know, the key is how do you not turn them off, because they're probably very fragile. Right. Any other suggestions on, I like that idea, Susan, just offering to sit next to them. Or if you're not in a position to do that, let's say you're the Toastmaster of the meeting and you're up there a lot, you know, pair them up with someone else who can. Nancy, you had a thought on that?
I've invited people to meetings before who have specifically told me in advance, I don't even want to introduce myself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in that situation, I've assured them that, you know, I would sit by them and be happy to do that. So we talked earlier about having an officer or at least a member sit next to each guest. That might be a great way to sort of break the ice with them, to say, our Toastmaster will ask everyone to introduce themselves. Are you comfortable doing that? And that's their point, to say, you know, you get the feel from them. You could say, well, I'd be happy to do it. Just tell me a couple of things about you. And I would think that would be a good time to handle that.
And see, how do you handle the virtual guests? You can't sit next to them.
Right. I've usually put something in chat when I've been the host to say that we like to have everyone introduce themselves for a moment. And if anyone is uncomfortable doing that, just let me know, and we'll be happy to at least announce that you're here.
Yeah, Jason, I saw you had your hand up. Is that something you guys have done as well?
Yeah, I was gonna suggest sending them a private chat,
Mhm.
and say, similar to what you would when you were in person with them, hey, this is kind of what we do. I'm willing to be your contact during the meeting. If you have any questions as the meeting goes on, send me a private message and I can private message you back. You know, taking those steps, kind of similar steps as you would whispering next to somebody sitting next to you.
Mhm. Mhm. Laura, I saw you had your hand up. Did you have something different to add?
Yeah. Hi, Keith. Hi, everyone. Basically, we had a meeting. We meet at the library occasionally, which closes at 8 p.m. promptly. We had to get out, and I didn't have enough time to reach out to reach out with any detail to two people who attended a meeting like 3 weeks ago. But so I followed up with a pretty detailed email as to what the due structure was. And well, carbon copied it to the other people in our club. And the reaction from the other people was that I was being a little too heavy-handed. But both of those people wound up interested, and one of them's joined already. And the other one has come to subsequent meetings, and I expect her to join as well, which was kind of interesting. I thought maybe I was being heavy-handed by, detailing that they were joining and that it would be prorated and everything. Tried to explain it. But it worked out kind of nice so far. So I thought I'd share that.
Thank you.
Yep, Teresa.
Unmute. One of my clubs actually all my clubs make sure that it's got the fee structure right in the welcome letter. So it includes a little bit of information about, here are some of the skills you can anticipate. Here are some of the things we do outside of actual meeting time, but we will include a little bit of information about that fee structure. So having the fee structure is important so people know what they're getting into, but maybe, kind of a sandwich type of idea, not just the beef of give us your money, please, but also here you can meet all these great professionals in your area, and here's some really great things that you can learn about for your professional development. So definitely keep the fee structure in there, but maybe add some of the other material as well.
All right. Any other questions? Yeah, Scott.
I was just saying, when you give them the welcome packet, all that information should be in there about what Toastmasters have to offer. And two, I think if you put in there, because I know there's a lot of corporate clubs, just putting the companies that have a Toastmaster club, it might tell people, hey, look at all these people are professionals. It's a good way to network, with a lot of people when you go to different events and that kind of thing. And I think that also helps, say, if they're looking for a job in the business world or something like that, that having that information in there that all the other clubs that we have, because how many corporate clubs does District 35 have? We have quite a few.
Yep. Yeah, on the whole idea of asking them what they thought of the meeting, I have seen a wide range of responses, anywhere from the person who is comfortable speaking already and then takes it upon themselves to deliver a 10-minute speech to a series of questions. Those are usually a little easier to address. There's plenty of ways to politely say, we'd be glad to talk to you about that outside of the meeting, different formats. But yeah, the usual response was, oh yeah, it was nice, it was interesting, I had a lot of fun. Susan?
Thank you, Keith. one thing that happened in our club, I'm ashamed to say more than once, is that we forgot to print the chat. So bless you, we forgot to print the chat.
sorry.
So we missed out on some of the emails and felt pretty bad about it. Luckily, we were able to recoup it because somebody had known who the person was or knew where they came from and was able to hunt them down. Now we always make sure somebody does print the chat.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy enough to get tripped up once or twice, right? Yuri, had a question or comment?
Yes, so kind of to follow up on Susan's, what Susan shared. It can be good to ask someone, maybe the person who might be the Zoom master, to save the chat. I mean, I save the chat all the time. I have history going back to 2020. And that definitely helped me go back and look up contact information. And Susan and everyone here, I think it could definitely be helpful and kind of promotes maybe additional leadership role, that if someone is dedicated to saving a chat, that person can be the go-to to provide information, especially if, as you pointed out, you will possibly lose the email. And it's a good way for a club member who does not have an officer role, who is willing to step up. If they say the chat, they can be counted on, and already they are immediately seen as the next, if not the president, the next SAA or next VPM. And I mean, who doesn't want to feel good about that?
Good idea. I like that one. Todd?
I was going to say that I like the idea of saving the chat. I also like the idea that, as we used to have a sergeant arm saying, turn off your cell phone, the bathroom is here, and all this other stuff before the meeting started, whoever the Zoom host is and is going to terminate the meeting, a minute or 2 minutes before they terminate the meeting should say, oh, by the way, if you were a speaker today and you want to save the chat, blah, 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 please save the chat. And then we are going to close the meeting in 2 minutes. Not, oh, the meeting's over. And then next thing you know, you're reaching to hit the 3 little dots, and all of a sudden the meeting shuts down before you have a time to do it. So I think as a shared best practice, there should be an advisory notice before the meeting is completely terminated. And on that note, I believe me and Yuri were having a conversation last week after the meeting. We said, this meeting ends pretty quickly. Maybe we should have the opportunity to have a chat continuing in case for some reason you were busy or whatever. So in the chat, I will be marking my Zoom line with the password if anybody wants to join after this meeting for a 40-minute chit chat, since it's only one of those free accounts with a 40-minute limit. So you will get my personal number in the chat in a moment. And I just wanted to comment that that was great. And the other thing I wanted to mention before we end is, have you noticed that there are a lot of public speaking coaches offering coaching courses now? As I troll the internet looking for clubs to visit, I end up in all these other different rooms. People charging $499 to like $20,000 for coaching and public speaking skills. The number one reason they keep saying they're charging all this money, it's anxiety. So if we can figure out a way to incorporate the anxiety thing and how we cure that, I think we might have a winning success going forward.
Yeah. So thank you for the reminder. Yuri brought that the post meeting meeting idea up. So I'm glad you guys have taken action on that. Is that something? Well, I mean, maybe we'll just kind of see how it goes, right? But is that something that you want to continue on an ongoing basis?
Well, I think it offers an opportunity to have a discussion instead of like the meeting just ending at the expiring time.
Yeah. Yep. I totally get that. I think it's a great idea, and I'm glad someone's going to do that. The reason I'm asking if we want to do that on an ongoing basis, we can then embed that in our invitation and the information on the district website, so that people know that. Because for me, for the most part, yeah, when it comes to the top of the hour, I'm moving on to other commitments on Sunday night. So not always, but most of the time. So I'm glad you've made that available.
I mean, it's essentially Todd being available, and it seems like to me that Todd is definitely available on nights like these. I think it is helpful to embed it into the announcement. That way, it can help if people for some reason have something going on at 7 p.m. If they see it, there is opportunity to have a little bit of time to ask questions. That 8 p.m. time slot Central Time would definitely be helpful. I think there's something we can definitely try going forward. As long as Todd is available, I tend to be available. Usually, I think that if we're trying to promote this and continue to grow this kind of structure, which I do like, I think offering additional 40 minutes is definitely a way to go.
Yep, and thank you for that. Grace, you had a comment or question?
I did. The anxiety thing, if Toastmasters can figure out how to cure that for people who hate public speaking, since that's the #1 fear over death, apparently, for most polls, then I think we would have so many members and a Nobel Prize in economics. The way our club, I'm the president of Speak TV Media Masters, we embrace anxiety. In fact, we encourage people to come and fail with us spectacularly. And then we give them examples of how we fail all the time and that we're a safe space to come and fail in. Now, we're probably more of a specialty club, although we don't designate ourselves as that, because most of us are either entertainers, other people that speak publicly and are very comfortable with it. So we don't have that same level of anxiety necessarily. But yet, because we're in that field, we have to be comfortable with failure. We have to be comfortable with the anxiety. Call it stage fright, call it, whatever you want to call it. It's different for all people. It's a little bit like courage. The brave man is not the one that doesn't have fear. It's the person that then faces it and overcomes it. So that's how we approach it. I think that certainly you can say, oh, we're going to help you get rid of it. But I don't necessarily, given my years of public speaking and entertaining and performing, I've never had it so quickly that I couldn't do something, but it also doesn't go away.
Right. Thanks for sharing. Yuri, did you have another comment, or is your hand up from the last time?
Yes. One comment is just please make sure you say the chat before you go. And another comment is for one of the guests that showed up at my meeting, he happened to work at his email was from a corporate kind of firm, and I looked him up and I looked at his profile, and he happened to list that he went to the same school I went to, and because it's a corporate kind of website, you expect that they would put their employees, especially the ones that are probably dealing with more clients, they put something about them. And I happened to find out that he went to the same school as I did. And that was an immediate kind of icebreaker. And that can work to your advantage. For like Gmail and all that, it can be difficult. But anyone or someone from Brookfield Tourism Relations, I found her on the website. Her picture was on there as well. That it can definitely work to your advantage, especially if it's a more of a firm or kind of business related. You can easily find something to connect yourself with them.
All right. Okay, we're at the top of the hour. Tom, you have a quick one, and then maybe we can, for those who have the time.
I'll make it quick. I suggest that we be careful about using the term public speaking. Todd might be the exception. My perception of a public speaker is one who gets paid to give a public speech. I like to use the word communication program, communicators program, because if someone is thinking about Toastmasters because they have a fear of public speaking, and then we tell them that this organization is involved with public speaking, it'd be better to say this organization is involved with communication skills.
Good point. Thanks, Tom. All right. So Todd, have you put the link to your Zoom meeting in here?
I just typed in the ID and the password. You have to type those into your little boxes to get in. There's no link right in there right now.
Interesting password. Okay, so I just okay. So oh boy. Okay, so aren't you, Todd?
Well, you all know this person who those initials go to, so or not all of you, but many of those people in this room do know whose initials those are.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thanks, Scott, for your presentation today. Great conversation. I think we've I think we've had more people attend this one than we have for several months. I'm not sure if it's because of Scott or the topic, or maybe you all just had nothing else to do on the 5th of February. I don't know, but for whatever reason, I enjoyed this. It was good. I hope you all got something out of it. And if you want to carry on the conversation, go on over to Todd's room, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks.